Hello, wildlings. I'm your Creepsmith, and you found my Fear Forge. Lucky you. Welcome back, wildlings. For tonight's tale, I took a factory job. Part 4. And yes, this is the finale. By Mr. Outlaw. I didn't answer the first few times he knocked. I didn't want to. Jeff, open the fuck up. Tell me what you found. I had no idea what he was referring to. I had found a lot of stuff after all. However, it turns out that he was only being polite by knocking. Within a few minutes, my door was down. It was so sudden I yelped in shock. I don't even know what he did. The door just kind of fell over. I looked around my box of an apartment, trying to identify an escape route, but then I remembered that I was on the 14th floor. Chad barges in and tells me that we have to go back to the factory. For the briefest second, I start to protest, but that never mattered. I wasn't getting out of this. So he grabs my arm, pushes me out into the hallway. He was so strong it seemed effortless for him. We get into his car and start driving. Once we get there, we're met with the familiar red and blue lights. And a bunch of dead cops. There's some kind of bizarre buzzing sound emanating from within the cornfields. It's almost like that ringing you hear in your ears when everything's absolutely silent. The more I sit still, the louder it is, but I don't like it. So I don't sit still. Chad seems to take a frantic look around the place before getting out of the car. He rushes over to the trunk and pulls out what appears to be an extremely large, rather bizarre-looking shotgun. And then he looks at me. Look, you're actually going to want my help here, so please, just don't fucking complain. You don't want to be stuck here forever, do you? This statement flusters me. What? What the fuck are you talking about? He does a half chuckle, half scoff before saying, yeah, let's go. I had no idea what he meant by that, but I was a bit too afraid to ask. We walked right into the factory because the doors were wide open. Everything was a mess. The assembly line was still running, but there were no workers to take care of it. In fact, there was no one in the building at all. I immediately directed my attention to the wall. I didn't know what he thought I'd found, but I had a guess. Over there, I tell him. That's where it is. That's where it is. Chad nods and we make our way over there. From what we could tell, somebody had already tried to break through there. There was a damn jackhammer on the floor. Its chisel was completely worn back. However, there were only a few cracks on the wall. I inspected it further, eventually locating the hole, and pointed toward it. Right there. That's where I saw it. Chad does an impatient half nod before he steps backwards. He raises the shotgun before firing off 2 devastating-sounding rounds. A few more cracks materialize, but no breakthrough. Nah, this ain't gonna work. He sounds angry. He looks around before gesturing toward the back room. Come on, might need your help here. For a second, I consider running away right there, but yeah, that never came to fruition. Without knowing what to do, I just followed him. We went into the same back room that I'd been in a few weeks prior, the one with the window and the door and the bumpers. I was expecting him to shoot the lock off or something, but he turned his immediate attention to the window instead, smashing it with the butt end of the gun. My earlier conjecture was correct. The room beyond the window wasn't dark. There was just black paper covering it for whatever reason. We jump through the window and find ourselves in some kind of long hallway. There's lights above, but they flicker intermittently. As we progress further down, it becomes evident that the place branches off quite a bit. At this point, I have absolutely no idea what the hell we've just stumbled on. Some time passes before we begin hearing something, like grunting in the distance. Chad stops and signals for me to do the same. It's getting louder, and it's familiar. A deep, clear voice and a jumbled, indistinct one interlocked in conflict. Winston and the suit immediately come tumbling out of one of the corridors in front of us. They're still fighting. In addition to losing his arm, Winston's missing one of his eyes. He has an exposed ribcage and is limping on a singular leg. However, the suit's not faring much better. Half of his jaw's been torn off, exposing dark blue muscle and an array of pitch-black teeth. His eyes, which are steely gray, are locked with Winston's single one, but they turn to face us when Chad cocks the gun backwards. "Fucking hell, I didn't know he was here too," I hear him mutter. Chad fires off 2 shots at the both of them in rapid succession. Winston reacts first, ducking into an adjacent corridor while the suit takes the full brunt of the slug. He stumbles back, now clutching the cluster of holes in his chest, but he is still standing. Chad's face drops. Fuck. In the time it takes him to reload, the suit has already lunged into his vicinity. He grabs one of Chad's wrists, crushing it with ease. Chad shrieks, but manages to use his other arm to swing the gun into the suit's exposed jaw, knocking out several teeth. Yeah, I didn't care what Chad said. I wasn't sticking around. But now absolutely lost and disoriented, I sprinted through the confusing corridor, trying to find my way out of this fucking place. But I guess I went the wrong way, because I found what I think Chad was looking for. I turned a corner, finding a door that looked like the one in the room we'd come through. I barged through it, but I nearly staggered back in shock at what was actually in there. There were a bunch of chained up, emaciated people with what I can only describe as a giant white screen at the opposite end of the room. None of them even bothered to look at me. The weird part was they didn't seem to be in pain. In fact, they didn't seem to react to anything at all. They were all just emotionless, blank. At some point, I was beginning to think that they were inanimate, but upon closer inspection, it was pretty evident that they were indeed breathing, only incredibly subtly. One of the most disturbing parts of all of this were their eyes. There were no irises or pupils, just a solid off-white where they should be. Wait. I recognized these people. I'd seen them around work. They were my co-workers. I walked around inspecting each one, and my suspicions turned out to be true. I found Sergio. I tried shaking him, but he was unresponsive, and he was so frail that it felt like I'd dislocate one of his shoulders right then and there. This was nearly too much to handle, but I tried to keep my composure. It was what I saw next that sent me over the edge. It was me, myself, chained and emaciated, yes, eyes white, yes, just like everybody else. There was also a hole right next to me. What? A hole? It couldn't have been... What the hell was this? I paced around trying to make a determination regarding what to do. However, my thoughts were cut short by the sound of something coming up behind me. It was Winston, still inexplicably alive despite being devastatingly bloody and broken, now crawling with one arm toward me. He looks up and shakes his head. Everything would have been fine. As I stumbled back trying to find some kind of weapon, he lunges at me. Despite now missing both legs and an arm, he still manages to knock me down. He slams one of his fists down on my ankle and I can feel it nearly break. I kick his face with the other leg, but the effect seems to be negligible. I scramble backwards and he lunges at me again, barely missing this time. Just as I think I'm absolutely done for, I can start to make out another set of raspy breaths behind me. Quickly, I turn around, seeing Chad standing there. Just like everybody else, he's beyond repair too. While he's standing on both legs, both of his arms are out of commission. One's been completely severed from the elbow down, and the other just lies limp at his side. But he's still got the shotgun. He drops it to the ground and kicks it toward me. "Fucking shoot him!" he bellows. I hastily grab at it and turn the barrel around just as Winston's preparing for another lunge. This time, I hit him square in the chest. His body bounces backwards before hitting a wall. For a moment, I think it's over. However, that hope quickly fades as Winston rapidly spins back around and now has a gaping hole in his upper body. "What the hell?" I find myself blurting out. "No, not him!" Chad screams. I turn to look at him again, seeing him raise a shaky finger somewhere to the right of me. I make a hurried attempt to pinpoint exactly what he's trying to point to, and then I see it. It's another Winston, also chained up. However, he doesn't seem to be starved like everybody else, retaining the same bulky frame that he had when I first met him. Out of the corner of my eye, I see the moving Winston bounding towards me. Without any hesitation, I raise the gun and take a desperation shot. Since he was rather far away, the bullets spread, hitting about 3 others close to him, but one of them hits where it counts, the neck. As soon as the connection is made, the crippled Winston ceases its movement. However, the other Winston bolts up out of the chair, covering his leaking throat with his hands. He stumbles for a few moments before falling down. He looks over at me, an expression of pure hatred plastered on his face, before ultimately going limp. As soon as this happens, the white screen at the other end of the room also disappears. Chad lets out an exasperated sigh and slumps down with his back to the wall. For a moment, we don't say anything, but he eventually breaks the silence. "You gotta kill your copy before it's too late." At first, I feel apprehension. "Are you serious? Why?" Just fucking do it. Winston wasn't really a part of this world. You're not too late yet. Everybody else is, but you aren't. I waver for a few more seconds. What happened here?" I ask him, but I get no response. I turn to look at his now lifeless body slowly sliding down the wall. His head pivots slightly as it hits the floor, revealing a large gash in the back of his skull. So at that point, I guess there's only one thing left to do there. My ankle hurts like hell, but I could still move on it. I limp over to my own copy, examining it one last time. And this time, I notice the difference. My face isn't completely blank like the others. There's some semblance of a nearly indistinguishable expression still fighting its way outward. I pick up the shotgun, and I slam it down on my own temple. I do this until the breathing has ceased completely. I was expecting to feel something, but nothing has changed. For a moment, I consider doing the same thing to Sergio, but then I remember Chad's last words. "You're not too late yet. Everybody else is, but you aren't." And then I do it anyway. Maybe there's still a chance for him, but maybe that's just wishful thinking. Before leaving, I fish Chad's keys out of his pocket. It felt a tad disrespectful, but I didn't know what else to do. I walk out the door and back down the corridors, this feeling of relieved melancholy looming over me. At some point, I pass the suit, who appears to have been torn in half at the torso. I don't know whether it was Chad or Winston or the gun or something else entirely that killed him. It doesn't really matter, though. Eventually, I find my way out. The crisp night air has never in my life tasted so fresh. The buzzing sound is gone now. However, I am not alone out here. I can spot about 7 figures, each standing at some point at the edge of the crops. It's not a mystery what I have to do. As soon as I start running, the figures follow suit. I jump into the car and start it with no time to spare. One of the figures slams into my side window. I don't even look at it. I don't want to. I simply peel the fuck out of there. When I get home, the sun is starting to come up. I lock all my doors and I shut all my blinds before passing out on the couch. When I wake up, about 11 hours have passed. I'm feeling a lot better. I suppose the only thing I really have to worry about at this point are the crop people, and I might also have to deal with the cops, but we'll cross those roads when we get there. I've messaged Sergio, but he hasn't responded. But, for now, I'm safe, at least. I think. Update. I just found a job posting in my local paper. $27 an hour. For a barista. At the Lightless Cafe. See, I like stories like that one. It's, punchy, it's to the point, it's well written, but the whole time I was reading it, every time he said the name of the character Winston, I kept thinking of Ian McShane from the John Wick films. Anybody else feel that, or am I just a weirdo? Stay scary, my wildlings. Make the most of your nights.